The forest was quiet in the late afternoon. Sunlight slipped through the tall trees and painted golden lines on the ground. Birds sang in the distance, and the hum of insects filled the air. Ryan wiped the sweat from his forehead and bent down to check the small survey device lying on the soil. It had stopped working again. The colony leaders wanted it fixed before nightfall, and he was the only one close enough to do the job. He knelt, opened the metal cover, and looked at the tangled wires inside. His hands were rough from years of work, but they were steady. He pulled out a broken piece, replaced it with a spare, and tightened the screws. It was quiet work, the kind he liked. No noise, no shouting, no rush. Just the forest and him. As he worked, he thought about how life on this colony was both simple and hard. Simple because there were no big cities, no endless rules, no fighting for space. Hard because every day meant survival. The soil was rough, the machines often broke, and the forest sometimes hid dangers. Still, Ryan preferred this life. He was not a man who wanted glory. He wanted peace. But peace rarely lasted. Ryan heard it then, a sound out of place. At first it was faint, like branches snapping under quick steps. Then came a clear sound of someone running, heavy breathing. The noise grew louder, closer. Ryan lifted his head and frowned. Few people ever came this deep into the woods, and no one ran like that unless something was wrong. He stood slowly, putting the small toolkit on his belt. His eyes scanned the trees. The sunlight made it hard to see far, but he caught movement, a figure rushing toward him. Before he could even call out, she burst into the clearing. It was not a colonist. She was small, thin, and trembling. Her skin was pale, almost glowing under the fading light. Her eyes were wide and bright like pools of silver. Strange markings curled faintly along her arms, glowing as if alive. She looked young, almost fragile, and she was afraid. Her chest rose and fell with sharp breaths. Her eyes darted behind her as if someone chased her. Then, without hesitation, she ran straight toward Ryan. Before he could step back, she reached him and pressed herself behind him, clutching his arm. Her body shook as if every part of her wanted to break apart. "Please," she whispered in broken human speech. "Hide. Help!" Ryan froze. He had seen aliens before. Traders sometimes passed near the colony, and explorers told stories of strange species across the stars. But never had he seen one so close. Never had one looked at him with such desperate eyes. He opened his mouth to ask her who she was, but voices cut through the trees. Harsh, sharp voices speaking in a language he did not understand. Ryan's heart pounded. He turned his head. From the forest came figures in dark armor, tall and armed. Their eyes glowed faintly under the shadow of helmets. Weapons hung at their sides, and their steps were heavy like soldiers used to hunting. One of them raised a hand, and the group stopped. Their leader stepped forward and looked directly at Ryan. "You," the figure said in accented human tongue. "Have you seen a runaway here? Small, pale-marked?" Ryan felt the alien girl's grip on his arm tighten. She was trying not to make a sound, but her body betrayed her fear. He looked at the soldiers. He thought of telling the truth. It would be easy. He had no reason to fight them, no reason to risk his life for someone he had just met. But then he felt her hand tremble against him. He heard her shallow breaths. He remembered the look in her eyes, eyes that spoke of pain, fear, and a desperate wish to be safe, even if only for a moment. Ryan swallowed. "No," he said, his voice steady. "I saw no one." The leader narrowed his eyes. He stepped closer. "Are you sure, human?" "I am sure," Ryan replied. He forced his body not to shake. He stood straight, calm, as if nothing was wrong. The alien leader studied him for a moment longer. Then he made a sharp sound in his own language and gestured to his group. The soldiers spread out, searching the trees. After a long, tense moment, they turned back. The leader pointed a finger at Ryan. "If you lie, human, you bring danger to your kind. Do not protect what you cannot understand." With that, they moved away, their dark forms fading into the forest shadows. Ryan stayed still until the last sound of their steps was gone. Only then did he release the breath he had been holding. Behind him, the girl's grip slowly loosened. She stepped out from his shadow, her silver eyes looking up at him. Tears clung to the edges, but she forced herself not to cry. "Thank you," she whispered. Ryan studied her for a long moment. She was clearly no soldier, no threat. She was young, lost, and afraid. But whoever those hunters were, they wanted her badly. and that meant helping her could bring danger not only to him, but to the whole colony. Still, he could not push her away. "You need to tell me who you are," he said quietly. She nodded weakly, but her body shook again as if her strength was fading. She leaned against a tree and slid down, her breathing shallow. Ryan knelt beside her, not knowing what to do. The forest was quiet again, but it was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, filled with unspoken questions. Ryan knew one thing. From this moment, his life was no longer simple. The alien girl had come running and hidden behind him, and her reason would change everything. The evening light stretched across the forest, painting the trees in deep shades of gold and red. Ryan stood beside the strange girl, unsure what to do next. She sat against the tree, her breath slowly calming, though her body still trembled. The faint glow of the markings on her arms flickered like dying embers. Ryan glanced around carefully, listening for any trace of the hunters. The forest was quiet again, but he knew silence could be dangerous. Those soldiers could return at any moment. He looked back at the girl. She lifted her eyes to him, silver and bright even in the fading light. "My name, Lyra," she said slowly, as if forming the words took effort. Her voice shook, but there was determination in her tone. Ryan nodded. "Lyra," he repeated, testing the sound. "I am Ryan." She gave a small nod, clutching her arms close to her chest. For a moment, neither spoke. The forest carried only the sound of wind through branches. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. "Why are they chasing you?" Lyra lowered her gaze. "They want me. Not safe, they say. I carry forbidden." Her words were broken, but the meaning was clear enough. Something about her frightened her own people. Something she carried, something inside her, was dangerous to them. Ryan frowned. He was no soldier, no leader. He was a worker who fixed machines and tilled soil. Yet here he was, faced with a choice that could bring danger to the entire colony. If he helped her, the hunters might return with more soldiers. If he left her, he would never forgive himself. "You cannot stay here," he said at last. "The hunters will come back. You need shelter. I will take you to the colony." Lyra's eyes widened. She shook her head quickly. "No, they find me. They follow. Your people." Danger. Ryan hesitated. She was right. Bringing her to the colony could bring harm to everyone. But leaving her here would mean certain capture. "We will move," he decided. "Not to the colony yet. There is an old shelter near the ridge. It was built for survey teams years ago. They stopped using it, but it is hidden. We can rest there tonight." Lyra studied him for a long moment, as if searching his face for truth. At last, she nodded. Ryan helped her to her feet. She was light, almost too light, and her legs trembled with every step. He steadied her with one arm, guiding her carefully through the forest. The path was not easy. Roots twisted across the ground and thick bushes blocked the way. Darkness slowly settled around them as the sun sank. The sounds of night creatures echoed through the trees. Still, they pressed on. At one point, Lyra stumbled. Ryan caught her before she fell. Her skin was cool to the touch, almost cold. She whispered something in her own language. A word Ryan did not understand, but he could guess it was thanks. They walked for what felt like hours. Every crack of a branch made Ryan tense. Every shadow looked like the shape of armored soldiers. Yet no one appeared. Finally, the ridge rose before them. Ryan led Lyra to a small structure half buried in the hillside. Vines covered the walls and the door hung loose on its hinges. Inside, dust and broken crates filled the space, but it was shelter. Ryan guided Lyra inside and shut the door as best he could. The air smelled of old wood and metal, but it was safe enough for now. He found a small lantern among the crates and lit it. The soft glow filled the shelter. Lyra sat against the wall, curling her knees to her chest. She looked tired, her silver eyes dull with exhaustion. Ryan sat across from her, studying her quietly. "You should rest," he said. She shook her head. "No rest, they come. Always come." Ryan leaned back, his arms resting on his knees. "Then tell me why. Why do they want you so badly?" For a long time, Lyra was silent. She stared at the lantern flame, her face pale and distant. Finally she spoke, her words soft. "My people fight war. Long time. Many die, children. Gone. I carry them. Their memory." Ryan blinked. He did not understand at first. "You carry their memory?" She nodded slowly. "Inside me. Not body, but mind. Their voice, their face, their cry. All inside. I remember for them. But leaders say, no, too much pain. They want erase. They want silence. Her voice broke and her hands trembled as she clutched at her chest. Rian felt a chill run through him. He could see now why she ran. She was not dangerous. She was a witness. A living memory of those lost. Her leaders wanted to erase the truth, and she refused to let it go. He stared at her, feeling something heavy in his chest. He was just a worker, but he understood grief. He had lost people too, and he knew what it meant to want the world to remember. "You are not a threat," he said firmly. "You are someone who matters. That is why they want you gone." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, though she did not let them fall. She nodded once, weakly. Before Ryan could say more, a sharp sound echoed outside the shelter, the crunch of heavy boots on leaves. Voices speaking in that harsh alien tongue. Ryan's heart leapt. They had found them. He quickly dimmed the lantern and motioned for Lyra to stay silent. She pressed herself against the wall, her body shaking again. Ryan crept to the door and peered through a crack. Outside, dark shapes moved through the trees, at least 3 of them, scanning the ground with strange devices. Their armor glowed faintly in the night. Ryan's mind raced. If they searched the ridge, they would find the shelter within minutes. He turned back to Lyra. She met his eyes, her face pale but steady. For the first time he saw determination there, not just fear. "We cannot stay," Ryan whispered. "We run." Lyra nodded, rising to her feet despite her weakness. Ryan opened the back hatch of the shelter, a small exit once used by survey teams. It creaked, but the noise was covered by the sound of the soldiers outside. He slipped through first, then pulled Lyra after him. They moved quietly along the ridge, keeping low. The forest stretched wide and dark, but Ryan knew these paths well. He had walked them many times for work. Now that knowledge might save them. Behind them, the soldiers entered the shelter. Ryan heard their angry voices, then the crash of crates thrown aside. He quickened his pace, guiding Lyra down a narrow trail that wound toward the river. The water shimmered faintly under the moonlight. The sound of rushing current filled the air, masking their steps. "We cross," Ryan said. The river was cold, the current strong, but they made it across with effort. Ryan held Lyra steady, her small frame leaning against him. By the time they reached the far bank, their clothes clung wet to their bodies, but they were alive. From the ridge came shouts. The soldiers had discovered the empty shelter. Lights cut across the trees as they searched wildly. Ryan led Lyra deeper into the forest, his breath heavy but steady. They would not stop now. As the night stretched on, they finally collapsed in a hollow beneath a fallen tree. Safe for the moment, though not safe forever. Lyra leaned against him, too tired to speak. Ryan stared into the dark forest, his mind racing. He had chosen to protect her, and there was no turning back. The hunters would keep coming. The colony might be in danger. But he knew one thing with certainty. This girl carried something worth saving, and he would not let her fall into their hands. The forest was darker now. The moonlight slipped through the branches in broken silver lines. Every sound seemed louder. The call of an owl, the rustle of leaves, the crack of a branch under a small animal's foot. Ryan sat under the fallen tree where they had taken shelter, his back pressed against the rough bark. His eyes stayed open even as his body begged for rest. Beside him, Lyra leaned against his shoulder. Her breathing had slowed, but it was not the calm of deep sleep. It was the shallow, restless breath of someone too afraid to let go of the world even for a moment. Her hands twitched sometimes, as if she dreamed of running still. Ryan stared into the night and thought about what she had told him. She carried memories, not her own but those of children lost to war. He tried to picture what that meant. Did she see their faces every time she closed her eyes? Did she hear their voices in her mind? The idea unsettled him, yet it also stirred something deep inside. He remembered his younger brother who had died years ago on Earth before Ryan left for the colonies. He remembered the pain of trying to hold on to his memory, of fearing that with time the face would fade, the voice would grow quiet. And here was this girl, carrying not one memory but many, keeping alive the voices of those who could never be heard again. Ryan clenched his fist. He could understand why her leaders wanted to silence her. Truth was often a weapon against those in power. A soft voice pulled him from his thoughts. "You not sleep?" Lyra asked, her words heavy with fatigue. "Not yet," Ryan said. "Someone has to stay awake." She shifted slightly, lifting her head. In the moonlight, her silver eyes caught his. Why help me? You know danger. Ryan took a long breath before answering. Because I saw your fear, and because I think what you carry matters. If I leave you, I know they will destroy it, and if I help you, maybe I can protect it. Her lips trembled, but she did not look away. For a moment he thought she might cry, but instead she whispered, "I'm not alone now." The words struck him harder than he expected. He gave a small nod, his chest heavy with unspoken thoughts. The night dragged on slowly. At dawn, the first light stretched across the trees. Ryan woke Lyra gently and they began to move again. He wanted to put as much distance as possible between them and the hunters. They followed the river for hours, using the sound of rushing water to cover their steps. The ground grew steeper as the forest thinned. Ryan's legs ached, but he pressed forward. Lyra walked close behind, her steps unsteady but determined. Around midday, they paused in a small clearing. Ryan gave her water from his flask. She drank slowly, then handed it back. "You must tell me more," Ryan said. "If I am to protect you, I need to understand." Lyra nodded, though her face grew tight with pain. "My people, long war. Many worlds, many dead. Leaders say fight for honor. But truth? No honor, only loss. Children die, families gone. Too many." She touched the faint markings on her arms. They glowed softly at her touch. "I am chosen. Not by will, by force. They put memory inside me. They call it Keeper. I remember faces, voices, last words, all inside. I carry weight of them." Her voice shook, but she forced herself to continue. "At first, leaders say it is holy. Keeper for honor of lost. But then truth show. Truth say leaders make war for power, not honor. Children's memory cry against them. They fear cry will break control, so they call memory forbidden. They send hunters to end me." Ryan felt a chill at her words. He saw now the depth of her burden. She was not only hunted, she was the last vessel of truth for an entire generation. "Do you hear them now?" he asked carefully. Lyra's eyes softened. She closed them for a moment, then opened them again. "Yes, not always clear. But I feel them. Sometimes laugh, sometimes cry. Always there. They not let me forget." Ryan looked away, swallowing hard. The thought was both beautiful and unbearable. To carry so many voices, to never have silence, to live knowing you were the only shield against forgetting. That was a weight no one should carry alone. "Then we cannot let them take you," he said firmly. "We must keep moving until we find safety." Lyra studied him, her gaze steady. "You risk much for me, why?" "You owe nothing." Ryan met her eyes. "Maybe I owe the truth. Maybe humans are meant to protect it, even when others try to bury it." For the first time since he had met her, Lyra gave a small, fragile smile. Their moment of calm was short. A sudden crack of branches echoed from the trees behind them. Both turned sharply. Shadows moved among the trunks. The hunters had found their trail again. "Go," Ryan whispered. He pulled her toward the far side of the clearing. Arrows of light shot past them, burning holes into the ground. The hunters shouted in their harsh tongue. Ryan grabbed a broken branch and swung it to block a strike, sparks flying as the weapon clashed. Lyra cried out, pulling him aside as another beam scorched the tree behind them. They ran, weaving between trunks, ducking under low branches. The forest exploded with noise, shouts, weapons, heavy steps pounding the soil. Ryan's lungs burned, but he did not stop. He pulled Lyra with him until they reached a slope. "Down here," he said, sliding down the dirt. Lyra followed, stumbling but catching herself. At the bottom lay a cluster of rocks forming a narrow cave. Ryan pushed her inside, then crawled after her. They pressed against the stone, holding their breath as the hunters rushed past above. The air in the cave was damp, the stone cold against their skin. Ryan could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Lyra's hand gripped his tightly, her body trembling against his side. Minutes passed like hours. At last, the footsteps faded into the distance. Ryan dared to breathe again. "They will not stop," Lyra whispered, her voice almost broken. "Then neither will we," Ryan said. They waited until the forest was quiet again, then crept from the cave. Exhaustion weighed heavy on them, but Ryan knew they had to keep going. If they stayed too long in one place, the hunters would trap them. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of the forest where the land opened into rolling hills. From here, the colony outpost was only a few days' journey. Ryan stood at the ridge, staring at the horizon. He knew the choice ahead. If he brought Lyra to the colony, the hunters would follow. His people could be placed in danger. But if he tried to keep her away, they would have no protection, no shelter, no allies. Lyra came to stand beside him. "You fear for your people," she said softly. "Yes," Ryan admitted. "But I fear more for what will happen if you are taken." She looked at him, her silver eyes full of sorrow and strength. "I cannot ask them to suffer for me." Ryan shook his head. "This is not only about you. This is about truth. If your leaders can erase it from you, then they can erase it everywhere. But if humans stand with you, maybe the truth will survive." Lyra was silent for a long time. Then she whispered, "You believe humans can protect memory of my people?" Ryan met her gaze. "I believe humans must." Her lips trembled again, and this time a single tear slid down her cheek. She did not wipe it away. Instead, she nodded. The choice was made. As night fell, they camped in the open hills. The stars stretched across the sky, brighter than Ryan had ever seen. Lyra lay close to the fire he built, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Ryan," she said softly. "Yes?"
"If I fall, promise me."
"Promise you carry memory too." Ryan's chest tightened. He looked at her, at the fragile figure curled near the flames, carrying the weight of so many lives. He reached across the fire and touched her hand. "I promise," he said. Her eyes closed, and for the first time her breath came easy. Ryan sat awake, staring at the stars. He had promised to carry the memory of a people he barely knew. And he would keep that promise no matter the cost. The journey across the hills was long and hard. The forest was behind them now, but the open land gave little shelter. Ryan and Lyra moved quickly by night and rested by day, hiding in gullies and tall grass whenever they could. Ryan kept watch with every step, for he knew the hunters would not stop chasing them. The air grew colder as they approached the colony. Small lights glimmered far ahead at night, the first sign of human homes. For the first time since they met, Ryan felt hope flicker in his chest. If they reached the colony, they could find allies, walls, and strength in numbers. But he also feared what might come after. On the third night, the lights of the colony grew brighter. Wooden towers stood on the edge, and he could see guards with lanterns walking the walls. Smoke curled into the sky from chimneys, and the sound of distant voices drifted with the wind. "We are close," Ryan said. Lyra's silver eyes looked toward the lights. Her face was pale, but her steps quickened. "Safe?" she asked softly. Ryan hesitated. "Safer than out here." As they drew nearer, the guards spotted them and called out. Torches were raised, and soon figures hurried from the gates. When they reached the colony walls, Ryan lifted his hand in greeting. "It's me," he called. "Ryan, I've returned." The gate opened, and several men and women stepped forward. They looked from Ryan to Lyra, their expressions tense. One of the older guards, a broad man named Thomas, frowned deeply. "Who is this?" Thomas asked. Ryan placed a steady hand on Lyra's shoulder. "Her name is Lyra. She needs shelter." Thomas's eyes narrowed. "She is not one of us." "What is she?" Before Ryan could answer, Lyra stepped forward. Her voice was soft but clear. Friend, please, need help." The guards exchanged uneasy glances. Some reached for their weapons, but Ryan raised his hand. "She is not a threat. She is being hunted, and I will explain, but not here. Please let us inside." After a long pause, Thomas nodded. The gate creaked open, and they were led into the colony. Inside the wooden walls, the settlement bustled with evening life. Families gathered near fires, children played under lantern light, and workers returned from the fields. But as soon as Lyra walked beside Ryan, voices hushed. Eyes followed her, filled with fear and suspicion. "She is alien," someone whispered. "What danger does she bring?" Another muttered. Ryan ignored them and guided Lyra to the council hall at the center of the colony. The wooden doors opened, and the leaders of the settlement looked up as they entered. There were 6 of them, men and women who had guided the colony through hard years. At their head sat Mira, a sharp-eyed woman with silver hair and a voice that carried weight. "Ryan," Mira said slowly, "why have you returned with a stranger?" Ryan told them everything. He spoke of the forest, the hunters, and how Lyra had hidden behind him. He told them of her gift, of the memories she carried, and of the danger her people brought against her. The council listened in silence. When he finished, the hall was heavy with unease. "So you bring her here," Mira said at last, her tone firm. "Knowing the hunters will follow. Knowing they may bring war upon us," Ryan met her gaze. "Yes, because she is worth protecting." A murmur ran through the hall. Some of the council frowned, others looked uncertain. One man shook his head. We cannot fight alien soldiers. We are farmers and workers. If they demand her, we must hand her over. No, Ryan said, his voice rising. If we hand her over, we betray what makes us human. She carries the truth of her people. If we let them erase it, then we are no better than those who silence the weak. The room fell quiet at his words. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes lowered, her hands clenched tight. Mira leaned forward, her sharp eyes fixed on Ryan. You speak with courage. But courage may cost lives. Are you willing to risk everyone here for her? Ryan's chest tightened. He thought of the families outside, of the children who played in the lantern light. He thought of the hunters' cold armor and glowing weapons. He thought of the voices inside Lyra. The children lost forever unless someone stood for them. Yes, he said at last, because if we do not stand for what is right, then our lives mean little. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Mira sat back in her chair and gave a slow nod. Very well. She will stay. But if danger comes, you will stand at the front, Ryan. I will, he said. That night the colony grew restless. Word spread quickly and whispers filled every corner. Some were afraid, others angry. But a few nodded with quiet pride. Ryan and Lyra were given a small cabin near the edge of the settlement. It was plain and cold, but it was shelter. Lyra sat near the small fire, staring into the flames. They will hate me, she whispered. Not all, Ryan said. Some will see who you are. She lifted her eyes to him. And if hunters come? Then we stand, Ryan answered. The following day the answer came. At dawn, horns blared from the walls. Ryan rushed outside to see shadows moving across the hills. The hunters had arrived. Their dark armor gleamed in the morning light. At least 20 of them marched forward, weapons in hand. The settlers gathered quickly, fear clear on every face. Mira stood at the gate with the other council members, Ryan and Lyra beside her. The leader of the hunters stepped forward. His voice rang out cold and sharp. Humans, you harbor what is ours. Give us the runaway and we will leave in peace. Refuse and you invite death. The settlers looked to Mira. Some shouted, Give her up. Others cried, Stand firm. The colony split between fear and courage. Ryan stepped forward before Mira could answer. His voice carried across the field. She is not yours. She is not a threat. She carries the truth of your crimes, and that is why you fear her.
But we humans will not hand her over.
Not today, not ever, the hunters hissed, raising their weapons. The settlers gasped, but Ryan did not move. He stood tall, his eyes fixed on the leader. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then something unexpected happened. Lyra stepped forward, her small frame trembling but her voice steady. I am Lyra, she called. I carry memory of the lost. You want silence, but I will speak. If you take me, you cannot erase them. Their voices live in me, and now, they live in humans too. She lifted her hand and her markings glowed bright. Images spilled into the air. Faces of alien children, voices crying, laughter, sorrow, final words whispered in fear. The settlers gasped, many with tears in their eyes. Even hardened guards looked shaken. The hunters froze. Some lowered their weapons, their faces troubled beneath their helmets. You see, Lyra said, her voice breaking yet strong. You cannot erase truth. It will live. The settlers rallied behind her. They formed a circle around Ryan and Lyra, standing with torches, tools, and old rifles. Fear still gripped them, but something greater rose with it. Pride and the will to defend. Mira's voice cut through the air. You heard them. The girl stays. If you want her, you must take her through us. The hunters shifted uneasily. Their leader growled, but his soldiers no longer stood firm. Some looked away. The vision had shaken them more than weapons ever could. At last, the leader spat a curse in his tongue and signaled retreat. One by one, the hunters turned and marched back across the hills. The settlers erupted in cries of relief. Some cheered, others wept. Ryan stood with Lyra beside him, his chest heavy with pride. Lyra leaned against him, her silver eyes wet with tears. They saw, she whispered. They cannot forget now. Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder. And neither will we. That night the colony was alive with voices. Many still feared the danger, but none could deny the truth they had seen. And for the first time Lyra did not feel alone. The morning after the hunters left was quiet, but it was not the kind of quiet that brought peace. It was the silence that followed a storm, filled with questions and heavy with what might come next. The settlers went about their tasks, but their eyes often drifted toward the cabin where Lyra and Ryan stayed. Whispers spread among them. Some spoke with wonder of the vision she had shared, of the voices and faces that hung in the air like living memory. Others still feared what her presence could bring. Ryan rose early and walked to the gate where Mira and the guards stood watch. The old woman greeted him with a nod, her sharp eyes fixed on the horizon. "They will return," Ryan said quietly. "Yes," Mira answered, "but next time they may bring more soldiers. They will not forgive the shame of retreat." Ryan tightened his grip on the wooden post beside him. "Then we must be ready." Mira studied him. "You speak as though this fight is already yours. Do you understand what you ask of us? These people came here for peace. They farmed, they raised children, they built homes. They are not soldiers." Ryan turned to her, his voice steady. "I know, but sometimes peace must be defended. If we give Lyra away, then what is the value of the peace we hold? It would be peace built on betrayal." Mira held his gaze for a long moment before sighing. "You have the fire of youth, but perhaps that fire is what we need." Back at the cabin, Lyra sat by the fire, her hands resting on her knees. She looked up as Ryan entered. Her silver eyes were calm, but there was sadness within them. "They will come again," she whispered. "Yes," Ryan said, "but we will not run this time. We will make a stand here." Her gaze lowered. "So many will suffer for me." "I do not want that." Ryan knelt in front of her. "Listen to me, Lyra, you carry truth inside you. That truth is worth more than walls, more than weapons. If your people are willing to destroy you just to bury that truth, then standing with you is the only thing that makes us truly human. We cannot call ourselves free if we turn you away." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. For a moment she said nothing. Then she reached out and touched his hand, her fingers light as a feather. "Then I will stand too." In the days that followed, the colony prepared. Farmers who had never held a weapon before learned to use old rifles. Children were moved into shelters dug beneath the ground. Barricades were built from carts and logs. Sharpened stakes were driven into the earth, and the wooden walls were reinforced with stone. The air grew tense with each sunrise. Scouts kept watch on the hills, and every sound of the wind made hearts beat faster. One evening, as the sun sank low, Lyra gathered the settlers in the square. She stood on a small platform, her silver markings glowing faintly in the dusk. The people looked up at her with a mix of fear and hope. "I know you are afraid," she said softly, her voice carried not by strength but by truth. "I know you wonder why you must fight for me. But I am not only myself, I am many. The voices of children who were lost live inside me. They were silenced, but through me they speak again. They belong not only to my people, but to all who can hear them. When you protect me, you protect them too. You protect the memory of every life that should not be forgotten." She lifted her hands, and once again the images filled the air. The settlers gasped as faces and laughter and tears danced before them. Even those who had doubted her before now stood with tears on their cheeks. When the vision faded, silence filled the square. Then Mira stepped forward and raised her hand. "You have shown us truth," Mira said, "and truth is worth protecting. We will stand with you, Lyra." The settlers cheered, some with voices strong, others with voices trembling. But for the first time they were united. That night, Ryan walked with Lyra along the wall. The stars above stretched endless and cold, but there was warmth in the way the settlers now looked at her. Some even smiled as she passed. "Do you see?" Ryan said softly. "You are no longer alone." Lyra looked up at the sky. "I never thought I would find family among humans, but here, I feel it." The next morning the hunters returned. Their ships descended from the sky, dark and sharp against the light of dawn. Dust rose as they landed on the hills beyond the colony. Doors opened and soldiers poured out, their armor gleaming, their weapons glowing. This time they did not send 20. This time there were hundreds. Fear rippled through the colony, but the settlers did not run. They gathered at the walls, weapons in hand, eyes fixed on the enemy. Ryan stood at the front with Lyra beside him, her markings glowing brighter than ever. The leader of the hunters stepped forward once more. His voice rang out like steel. "Humans, you defied us. You dare resist. Hand over the runaway, or we will burn your colony to the ground." Mira stepped to the wall and shouted back, her voice clear. "You will not have her. Not today. Not ever." The hunters raised their weapons, and the air crackled with the sound of energy charging. Ryan looked at Lyra. "It begins." But before the first shot was fired, Lyra stepped forward. Her eyes glowed with fierce light, and her voice carried across the field. You want silence, she cried. But I will not be silent. Hear them now. Her markings flared like fire. A wave of light swept over the colony and spilled across the hills. The hunters staggered as the air filled with voices. The cries of children echoed. Their laughter rang, their songs rose like wind. Thousands of voices poured from Lyra, a chorus of memory too strong to be contained. The settlers fell to their knees, tears streaming down their faces. Even hardened guards wept openly. But the hunters, they froze. Their weapons shook in their hands. Some dropped them. Others pulled off their helmets, their faces pale with shock. Among them were young soldiers no older than Rian. Their eyes widened, their hearts breaking as the voices of lost children struck them. They had been told there was no truth, that the stories were lies, but now they saw and heard it with their own eyes and ears. The leader shouted, but his voice was drowned by the chorus. His soldiers no longer obeyed. Some fell to their knees. Others turned and walked away, their armor clattering as they abandoned the field. The leader raised his weapon in fury, but before he could fire, his own second-in-command stepped forward and tore the weapon from his hand. No more, the soldier said. His voice trembled, but it carried the weight of truth. We will not be part of this silence. One by one, more soldiers dropped their weapons. The field that had been filled with threat now became filled with surrender. The settlers cried out in victory. Some cheered, others simply wept with relief. The hunter's leader was dragged away by his own men, his voice lost beneath the sound of freedom. Rian stood with Lyra, his chest rising and falling with disbelief. He turned to her and she smiled through her tears. They heard, she whispered. They will never forget. For days after, the colony was filled with celebration. The hunters who had surrendered chose to remain. They laid down their armor and tools of war, and many asked for forgiveness. Some joined the settlers, working in the fields, building homes, and seeking a new life away from silence and cruelty. Lyra became a symbol not only for the colony, but for hope itself. Her gift was no longer a burden, but a light that bound people together. The settlers came to her not with fear, but with respect. And children often gathered to hear the soft songs she carried from the voices of the lost. One evening, as the sun set over the hills, Ryan and Lyra stood together on the wall. The sky burned with gold and red, and the land stretched wide and free before them. We made a stand, Ryan said quietly, and we won. Lyra turned to him, her eyes glowing softly in the fading light. Not with weapons, not with fire, but with truth, Ryan smiled. That is what makes us human. She looked back at the horizon, her voice gentle. And that is why I chose to run to you. Because in you I saw something my people had lost. I saw a heart. The two stood in silence as the stars began to appear. The colony behind them was alive with laughter and light, stronger than it had ever been. And though danger still lingered in the universe, the promise of tomorrow was bright. For as long as voices remained, truth would never be silenced again.